Hello everybody, and welcome back to another timeline and final thoughts. I'm KRX, and this is the most recent campaign that we completed over on the Twitch channel. We are playing as the Aztec. So of course the Aztec have a lot of interesting mechanics. They have a special CB, all of the nations in this region. And here's the Maya nations down there. They have their own thing going on. So we need to reform our religion. Essentially what they added with El Dorado is this idea that you can play this sort of like little mini game in your own little Thunderdome, and if you play it enough times, and you sort of, for the Aztec at least, if you vassalize 5 nations, then you can hit a button to reform, to enact a reform. And once you enact 5 reforms, once you do this process 5 times, which it seems like a lot, it is a lot, then once the Europeans show up, once you buddy-buddy with, rub up against one of them, you don't really have to buddy-buddy them, I guess, but once you rub up to them, then you can actually hit a big, huge button that lets you catch up in technology. Not 100%, but pretty close. Then you're kind of like westernized, right? This was kind of one of the systems that they included to sort of replace the westernization. You get caught up on institutions that the European that you're bordering has embraced, and then you also catch up on, I think, like 50% of the technology difference or something like that. So what we're doing here, one of the things that's going on, and this is actually going really, really fast, we've already conquered a bunch of land. At this point, we've already done the process of vassalizing 5 nations, releasing them by hitting a button to enact a reform. We've already done that probably like 3 or 4, maybe 4 times at this point. And every time we do that, we're managing a doom counter. And the more provinces we control, the faster our doom goes up. But the more times we reform our religion, the slower the doom goes up. So it's this balance between expanding a little bit, vassalizing mostly, and just sort of rinse and repeat until we have all 5 reforms enacted. Once those are enacted, then we can conquer as much land as we want. So that's the phase that we're in now. And right now we're trying to consolidate all of this, trying to gain this power base, be as strong as possible until the Europeans show up. We can't build boats. We can't explore. Ideas are 50% more expensive. Technology is 50% more expensive. We can't, I don't know if we can get feudalism or not, but we decide not to, because presumably, right, if we can get a European down here and rub up against them in some way, if they colonize here, if they colonize down here, or whatever, then we'll be able to, get the institutions for free. So why waste the point? So we're developing our own land just for the sake of developing it. We have tons of gold. There's tons of gold in here. In fact, our capital state is completely gold. It's like 5 or 6 gold provinces. There's gold all over the place, so there's great places to develop. And we are just kind of like consolidating as much as we can. In fact, we've done a really good job at that. This is the only little bit left, but boom, here's the first thing. What happens is, if you saw that, this province went yellow before this province went yellow, right? This is Spain. What happened here is Spain actually opted to, they have claims on all of this. And we've already seen, heck, we've seen the French, we've seen conquistadors, right? We've seen French conquistadors, British conquistadors, we've seen Mamluk. I kid you not, the Mamluks have been down in here, hanging out, exploring the New World with conquistadors. They never ended up colonizing the New World, though, which is good. They probably ended up colonizing like Africa and so on. And I think eventually they got beat up by the Ottomans pretty badly. They didn't really have much of a long stay in the colonialism era, but we saw the Mamluks down here. We saw a bunch of Europeans down here. What happened is Spain actually uses their missions that they get free claims on us. They use those to threaten war for a gold province, but they're landlocked. We're thinking to ourselves, at first we're like, happy day, you know what I mean? Let's give them this province. And then that means that we'll be able to reform. Problem is they have to core this. And if they take this, they can't core it because it's landlocked. They couldn't core this. So we had to sell them this province so that they could core both these provinces. And ultimately, then we could reform. Now, I forgot to actually attack into this nation quickly enough. So you're going to see that some of this goes Spain. Yep, see, we get half of it, they get the other half. We should have taken all of that. That was a mistake. Oddly enough, they coincidentally started colonizing next to us as well after we did this, so we technically didn't have to do this. We needed to give them the province in war, because the reality is there was no way we were going to beat a war against them, because we're like 6 or 7 techs back. We're like complete primitives at this point, right? But at this point, we can actually reform our religion. So we are now caught up to the Europeans, sort of. We're probably like 2 techs back behind Spain at this point. We're cutting off Spain here. just because we could have let them colonize, but I kind of decided to cut them off. Actually, it looks like New Spain. It looks like, okay, all of this has formed a colonial nation, New Spain, which has them kind of working their way up here now. And then we ended up actually just beating them up. And I believe that was in an aggressive war, where we knew that we could win this because we could easily siege down all of their holdings here, and we could hold this choke point down here and prevent their smaller colonial nations from doing anything. We were kind of just taking advantage of the fact that they weren't really prepared to fight us very strongly. But right now what we're doing is we're trying to get a landing here on the Caribbean. Portugal has taken almost all of the Caribbean. We have Scotland in here as well. We're also working our way up here, cutting off Florida, trying to work our way up to the 13 colonies. And at this point, what we've realized is what I didn't know. See, I had to learn all this as I was going. I didn't know how all this worked, but we can attack these colonial nations. We can attack these without calling in their overlords. We could attack the Caribbean colonial nation without fighting Portugal. And that made this phase of the game relatively simple. Okay, so there's about 75 years where we're conquering, bits of New Granada. So we did go exploration ideas and expansion ideas, of course. That's how we're doing all of this colonization. Ultimately, with the hope of colonizing all of North and South America. That was kind of one of our goals, right? And we are going for the achievement, the Sunset Invasion. And what that means is we eventually have to flip this on its head and attack the Europeans. This was an incredibly fun campaign that had its moments of just being kind of tedious. And we even have Norway down here. France. This is essentially all France is going to be able to do in the New World. I'm just trying to sort of, make sure that we don't get too many nations down here all fighting. But for the most part, we're able to continually beat up on bits of New Granada, bits of the Caribbean, bits of Florida. You can see we're taking bits of Florida here, right? Let's pause it, because what's going on also in this time is Spain is declaring war on us constantly. Because even though they don't get into the war with us when we attack New Granada or Florida or Portugal with the Caribbean nation, even though they don't get called in there, that means that we don't get a truce with them, right? So they're able to attack us. We are still getting aggressive expansion with Spain, big time. Spain has minus 300 aggressive expansion. They hate us. They are declaring war on us constantly. They're forming coalitions with Great Britain. Great Britain, Portugal, Spain are just constantly declaring war on us. Luckily, they can't do anything to us. We have a pretty strong navy at this point. They can't really land on us. We beat up what we end up essentially doing is just beating up. We hold the war goal, which is always some, ridiculous. They always want some province over here or something like that. So we hold the war goal. And we beat up their colonial nations. We suppress the colonial nations that are in the fight. And we just kind of hold. We just hold. We defend the shores, and we hold. And even if they land troops, they can't ever land enough troops to actually beat us. If all of their forces were in the New World, we'd probably get killed, or at least lose the war, right? But because they're only able to drop off 20 at a time, we can see that, intercept them, even if they successfully land down on us. We're able to intercept them and kind of keep them off the New World. So for the most part, we're just playing a lot of defense. And what happened is in the first time, I think this was actually the second time, they declared on us 3 or 4 times in a row. It was just every 6 years declare. Most of them were white pieces, except for in this case, we took one bit here from Corsica. It wasn't a very good war goal for us to be taking land. In fact, there was no way we could take land here, because that would mean we'd have to invade and siege these forts down. Corsica wasn't in an area in a range of a fort, so we could take Corsica without sieging down forts. We eventually also continue on and take this province too, for no reason. It ended up being that there was no purpose in doing this. It did kind of help us a little bit. We ended up having the navy base, right? It gave us a naval launching off point, which was really good in the future. But for the most part, we get through this kind of a phase. We get to the point where we're so powerful that Spain's not quite feeling it. We're kind of also removing the Portuguese influence down here, so that Portugal is no longer hating us as much, because we're kind of avoiding them. England, we're kind of also cooling the brakes a little bit on England. We're going to see that Newfoundland and Louisiana here are going to expand pretty heavily, which is kind of just because we're trying to make it so that Spain doesn't continually declare war on us over and over and over. And the way they're doing that is because they're getting into these coalitions and buttering up with Castile, with Great Britain and Portugal, right? So we're just, kind of enjoying gobbling up New Granada Florida, just kind of consolidating the world. And honestly, this section of the game is rather boring, and the biggest limiter for us is points. We cannot get enough points. We're having to spend Diplo points for these conquests because we can't make claims fast enough. There's so much land that we can take, and there's so many little individual nations that we can go to war with, right? Because every single one of these colonial nations is a different, like, nation, right? And we can go to war with each one of these and take a huge amount of land because it's so cheap and easy to take. And it's like, you're talking like every time it's a war, it's like 400 admin, 500 Diplo. It's just insane. So eventually we're like, okay, we need imperialism. Because once we get imperialism, then we can just do whatever we want, right? Not have to pay Diplo. Also, we're getting our absolutism up. We're also getting more administrative efficiency so that the admin cost is coming down. So it's a point issue right now. I think ultimately the reason why we're not going to, continue this to the end and continue to conquer a bunch is just because, again, it's just points. I mean, we could take 100 war score with Spain, no problem. Over and over and over again, but it's just the points, right? If we're doing that to Spain, France, Portugal, and Great Britain, and, everybody else, it's just like you just don't have the points. The way that we, put our ideas in and stuff like that, we didn't set ourselves up to do like a mass mass conquest of Europe. So here we are in 1694. We have the foothold, right? We have the launching off point to attack France. We also have imperialism. France is ironically the first target because France doesn't have a very good alliance network. We call in against France, and France only has the one colonial nation down here. So we're able to actually beat up France significantly. We get this foothold here for for flooding into Spain, a land border with Spain. We take Paris because we need to take Paris, London, Amsterdam, Lisboa, Madrid, and Rome. Those are the goals, right? And things are going to start happening fast. Boom, there goes entire Portugal. We just beat up Portugal. Saw an opportunity, we took it. Portugal's gone. I mean, they're not gone, right? They're not gone, but we literally, ironically, we take everything that they control. This is, now we're doing a little bit of truth struggling, right? France, Spain, Portugal, Great Britain, they're all pissed at us, but we're doing a little bit of truth struggling. Boom. Ottomans swoop in, take a ton of the Pope, just absolutely destroying Italy. The Ottomans are on fire right now. And that's partly because Russia is also killing it. You can see that Russia's really moving in, taking lots of Lithuania. They've taken lots of Crimea. They're moving down here. Russia's like, this is a big Russia. They're sort of encroaching on sort of Scandinavia a little bit. This is a good Russia. Part of that is because Russia and the Ottomans have been allies almost the entire game. Russia and ally are allies. Scandinavia is doing pretty well. We're actually allied to Scandinavia at this point, and Prussia. Those are our two allies, just as a little bit of a deterrence for Spain. Things are moving fast now. Boom, we attack Spain, and that calls in Great Britain because these guys are allied, and we take out a big chunk of Spain. We take out a big chunk of Great Britain. Taking Rome was pretty simple. We have everything. Ironically, the last thing we have to get, right? The last thing we have to get is Amsterdam, because the Amsterdam is allied to Ottomans and Russia. They're allied to the Ottomans, Russia, and actually Prussia too. We're allied to Prussia, right? Amsterdam is allied to Ottomans, Russia, and Prussia. And the first time we declare, we actually had to fight 2 wars to win this. One war, we declare for Amsterdam. And we swoop in, we siege all of this, but we can't get down here to siege. And the Ottoman, just hundreds of thousands of Ottoman troops, hundreds of thousands of Prussians. Like, I honestly, I don't even remember the whole situation, but I just remember like 400,000 troops just flooding over us here, pushing us back. We actually lost that war. We actually legitimately lost a war, which if we come over here, we're going to notice this little bit here. Like, why do these people exist? Well, these people exist because, we had conquered all of this at one point, right? But these people exist because this is what the Netherlands wanted us to do in the Lost War, is just we could just release some nations in the New World, and the Netherlands were okay with that. So we had to release like 3 or 4 nations in order to get out of the war against the Ottomans that they were like winning. They were starting to siege down a lot of the forts down here. We had to get out of there fast. Yet the Ottomans were like coming up this way. The Ottomans were coming this way. It was just a nightmare. We didn't have nearly enough troops to fight them. And the Ottomans are really, really strong, of course. But eventually the second war, we were better prepared. We had more troops up here. We had this under control. So they couldn't come this way. We kind of baited the Ottomans to kind of come this way. And then we block them, and then they try to walk all the way around. We kind of tricked the AI a little bit, to be honest. But either way, we rushed. We just completely rushed down all of the Netherlands here. and just sort of rushed for Amsterdam and for the end of the war. So it was kind of a blitz. It was a little bit of a blitz. That's why we only took the one province. At this point, we've got the achievement. We have Rome, we have Amsterdam, we have Paris, we have London, we have Madrid, we have Portugal, and for the most part, it was rather easy. We're beating up Spain a little bit more. We're just kind of beating people up just because we can. What we're really trying to do at this point, while we're still playing the game, is we're trying to consolidate North America. We're beating up the colonial nations down here. And we're filling in, colonizing the different gaps, right? We got some gaps in here. Boom. And it looks like within a couple years here, timeline is going to end. And we are going to have, this is going to what we're going to be left with, right? There we go. A pretty nice looking Aztec. We could continue, you know, we have 75 years, continue to conquer the old world. And we could. We could take all of Iberia, we could take all of France, we could take all of England. And that would look pretty cool, but the game's getting a little bit laggy actually, which is kind of annoying. We're making tons and tons of ducats. 200 ducats, that's with rooting out corruption at 100% capacity to root out corruption, which lowers corruption by 1 per year. We're getting a huge penalty because we have too many territories. We're too big, right? But if we lowered, if we didn't have corruption, if the corruption mechanic wasn't a thing, then we'd make it even more money. We don't even know what to spend with on our money, honestly. At this point, if we look at our morale, it's pretty awesome. Let's look at our morale. Actually, Prussia, holy cow, Prussia 9.46? They have more army tradition than us. That's crazy. Russia's actually higher than us, but that's it. That at one point we had 9.5. I think our golden age might have ended. We had 9.5 morale, and the Ottomans had less than 7. And it was just that second war. It was just we stacked as much as we could. We hit the gold. We forgot to hit the golden age for the first war, actually. I think. Then we hit the golden age, and it was just boom, bada bing. So making tons of money. Here's our ideas, right? Here's our ideas. We ended up going defensive first into expansion because we didn't really need exploration immediately because we just wanted to colonize as quickly as possible. Well, now expansion gives you 2 colonists instead of exploration, so it makes more sense to go expansion for quick colonization because we were just colonizing locally. But we did need exploration to be able to find the Caribbean islands, to be able to actually uncover a lot of this stuff, to be able to go to war and just sort of like discover a lot of land. Because one of the things we're dealing with, as you can see, we're not getting any sort of spread because our tech group is completely destroyed. We're the only people in our tech group, so we're not getting the spread of the fog of war as we play through. We're getting trade just for kind of just because we're being goofballs right now. Quality. Humanist is insane. One of the things I do want to point out, minus 18.5 unrest. Wow. Wow. So the religion of the Aztec is just broken. I mean, it's 10% morale, 2 local missionaries, which I guess all of them have, and then minus 2 unrest. I don't know. That's so strong. I feel like really strong. But yeah, just going humanist is just so powerful. One of the first times I think we've ever done it, and I really like it. I really like it. We didn't get Bermuda. That was a mistake. We should have taken Bermuda and the Galapagos. But there we go. That's the Aztecs, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you guys in the next one.